Hello, lovely people. Welcome to another video in the DIS-TANZEN series where we are learning about how to improve our dance teaching experience online, taking that magic we have in live classes and trying to transfer that to the digital realm. Today I'm with my good friend Lucy, who is a theater maker, a performer, and a dancer. And I invited her for us to get insight about what we can learn from her experience in theater and performing, and connect that to dance, as she has all of those skills in one mind and body. I think we're gonna learn a lot. Hi, Lucy.
Hey, Ali. It's wonderful to be here, and I'm really excited to exchange with you about this because I think, we've spent the past year exchanging like this via Zoom and also teaching via Zoom, and it is a totally different world, and it's gotten me thinking a lot, and we've had some really interesting conversations up until now about what's different about Zoom, what's similar about Zoom, and how are the skills that we have as dance teachers in the space transferable, and what do we need to learn? So it's been really interesting to brainstorm that with you. And I think to get us started, I'd really like to jump on the word that you just brought in, and that was magic. The magic that we create as dance teachers in our dance spaces. And it's sort of similar to the magic that an actor creates, a performer creates when they're on stage. And how do they do that? What is that magic? How does it work? And it has a lot to do with stage presence and with the sort of inner atmosphere, I think, that we create. Right. And so maybe the first thing that you and I could talk about is that inner state. Like, what is it that we're trying to bring to our Zoom? Because we're down to the bare minimum. You know, we've done the hack. We've got a little bit of light. We've got a microphone. You know, we have some things that are helping us, like a stage or a dance space that's decorated. But everybody's in their own living room or their own, hotel room, or who knows where everyone is. I'm in a very strange empty space right now teaching. But it's like we're each in these sort of non-atmospheric places. How can we create a combined atmosphere together? And that has everything to do with the atmosphere, I think, that we contain within ourselves. And how do we key into something that works for us that we can then transfer? And I think you and I have talked a lot about authenticity and sort of that each person's going to have their own style. So I don't so much want to suggest you have to do this and you have to do it like this and you have to say this thing. It's not this sort of cookie cutter, everybody should do it the same way. I think it's really more about what atmosphere what do I want to feel, and how do I want to share that? So how am I connecting? And for me, it's a lot of this goal of like, my main aim with this class that I'm teaching is to reach and connect with my students, especially in this distant time that we're in and these very strange setups that we have of like my tiny computer and your computer and this person's phone. How can we bring us together? And so my goal, my main intention, and my sort of inner orientation is, let's connect. So I think when I come into my classes, the way that I would want to create that atmosphere is trying to connect very intimately and personally when I start my class. So maybe I've got a little bit of music playing, but it's soft so that I can actually talk to my participants, my dance students, before the class begins. So everyone's kind of strolling in the way they do. Some are late, some are early, and taking advantage of that time to just personally connect with them, say hi, have a conversation. Everyone normally, you need to mute your mics during the class, but encouraging people to unmute their mics at the beginning of class and just have a conversation. For other people, it might be something like, I really like to dance and find my own groove at the beginning of a class. So you have music on and you're waving at people, but you're also showing them like, hey, here I am. I'm getting warm. You're invited to get warm. This is what makes me feel good in this atmosphere at the beginning of my class. I think something that doesn't represent that connection is like having the camera off and just music on, or having your camera on, but you're not in the space. I know that's something that maybe is necessary at times, or maybe more comfortable if you're kind of not wanting to just kind of sit around in front of the camera as people come in. But I think it's missing an opportunity to set up that atmosphere, because the room, it ain't got atmosphere, you know?
It makes such an impact. The moment you move away, like, what's happening?
Yeah. There's not a lot, you know, this isn't a space that's inspiring or inviting or, you know, that makes us feel something. The only thing that's going to make us feel something over Zoom is that sense of human connection. So I guess the invitation is find what works for you, cue into that. If you're someone that likes to move at the beginning and just invite everyone to move as well, go for that. If you're somebody that maybe you know your students very personally, so that little chat, that little check-in at the beginning is what creates the atmosphere of community. I think both are very viable, but it's something that's interactive at the beginning, that you're saying, hey, I see you and I see you and I see you. And if I can't actually see you, I'm going to imagine that I can see you. That's something you and I have talked a lot about, is how do we connect if we can't see each other? I don't know if you want to add a few words about that imagining.
Well, some thoughts that comes to my mind is, first of all, for example, one thing we are doing with our online sessions is we even schedule 15 minutes before class starts time where, for example, I'm there in case somebody comes earlier, we have a chat. And that part of the conversation is completely related to the class content. It's just hangout time. We have it before the main session starts, and we don't do it at the end, but we make sure we save time at the end to also talk about how was the training, what was the journey like for you, and people talk about their challenges, successes from different perspectives. I mean, we celebrate each other. We have those moments. So we have to more actively, like you say, create that intimate effort. And I really like the way you started this whole thing with was my aim is to create an intimate moment with my participants, where I think maybe because of the luxury of live events sort of makes that happening by default, or just by habit of knowing how to interact with people in life. Whereas on Zoom, I think we go in with the same thought, I'm going to teach dancing, or I'm going to teach this thing. And we don't go in with a thought of like, I'm going to create an intimate moment. And so I think that is a very nice mindset to enter the whole session in the first place. For example, like you said, actually actively mentioning names during a session makes a difference. I even like if you would just play music and you're DJing, for example, and you have a session and multiple people on the screen, just saying, "Hey, Lucy, I see you." That enough makes a person feel much more connected already. And I know this happened to me, and I felt, oh, great, or I was at a bigger Zoom session, and it almost in that setting, it started to become very cliche in terms of like they had this checklist that they have to almost go through. Like each new person who came spent 2 minutes to walk around and just mention names. Like I see you. So it became a little bit too sort of rule-based and technical, and then we again lose that naturalness that you expressed as a key point. But using it a little bit is with good taste, so to say, I think is very powerful.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing, is that as dance teachers, we want to use these tips and tricks, but we want to use them in a way that it actually ignites that magic within us, rather than being something like a means to an end or a sort of, a little cheap trick.
Exactly.
If you're not the type of person that's going to want to like call out every single name, or maybe you're teaching to students that you don't know them well, what is the way that you find in life, or via Zoom now we've all got experience, what's the way that you feel connected? Maybe it's just a wave, but like, hi, this person, or a direct message or something like that. But just setting that intention of we're here to connect and not just we're here to learn dance, I think makes a huge difference for ourselves as dance teachers as well. And that's what we do as performers on the stage, keeping that awareness of the audience in the sense of, sure, my monologue may be about, to be or not to be, or my, physical performance right now is about joy or whatever it is. But just keeping that like inner sort of connection with my audience and how are they responding. And sometimes you don't get that immediate feedback back, but at least we're sending that. And I think it is challenging when we're not in a space where we can get that immediate feedback. We've got to rely a little bit more on the sense of sending and of performing. So that brings us into a sort of related but separate topic of how do we perform on Zoom? So we've set up the atmosphere and we know we're trying to connect and we've created this intimacy, but now we move into the class and it's really difficult. A lot of times you've got participants that have, a camera off in a place so that they can see you, but they can't film themselves, or their internet's not good enough, they can't share, or your internet's not good enough and you need everybody to turn off their, all these different technical reasons. So we can't always see our participants and we can't always get the feedback of how is our audience, how are our dance students responding to what we're sending out. So in those moments where a direct feedback isn't available, I think it's really essential that we know what our message is, we know what our intention is, and we just send that right into the camera. And so what I'm doing right now as I speak to you is I'm not checking in with you every 2 seconds to see do you like what I'm saying? Are you understanding what I'm saying? This quick little drop down to look at your face, and maybe your face on my screen is down over here. I've got a display over there. It's somewhere completely different. Instead, when I'm, doing this little monologue about how we want to present, I'm sending it right into the camera and I'm imagining giving you that message. And then after I've given you that message, then there can be that moment of
exactly.
How does that register with you? And I think going back to then connection, it's really nice to take the opportunity and invite you to share, whether it's a quick thumbs up or if there's any questions, now's the time to ask it in the chat, or how do you feel about that? And even allowing some people to turn on microphones and give some feedback. I think those moments when they're built in are very important for that overall sense of give and take. And we normally have that more in a live class. We've got it together. You can hey, blah, blah, blah. How do you think? And you get that physical response, but we don't have that in Zoom. And so instead it's more of the sense of, I give you the package. Then I let you open the package and then you can respond, oh, thank you for the birthday present, whatever it is. So I think like looking into the camera is helpful, and really knowing, okay, this is the block of information that I have. This is what I want to send to you, and then take the pause.
Yeah.
I find that to be the best way to go about it with Zoom.
Nice. And this makes me think of a few things as well. And I think, I don't know how it is from your perspective, but as I was maturing as a man and a human being, when going on dates and so on, it was always this insecurity, am I, does the person like me? Am I coming across as the person I want to come across, and so on? You have these insecurities, and what hopefully most people learn, often maybe the hard way, is the more you need to get that validation, the less good you come across in terms of it becomes needy, it's insecure, and it's not attractive. And one of the things I learned in this journey is to be more comfortable with myself in those situations and have an answer to that question. Am I liked? Is the person happy to be here with me? There was one very simple question I asked myself: is this person still here? And if the person is there, it's sort of a very strong indication that, yes, you're liked, you're doing good, just be yourself, relax. And then that created also that expression of you're relaxed and don't double check, don't ask all the time. And I feel there is a little bit of that as well when we go online and we were teaching. As a teacher, you can create more space in terms of how is this going for everybody? Do you like it? Or let me know in the chat, or unmute yourself. Let me hear what's working for you and what's not. You can have those moments to get feedback. But like you say, you don't need to check all the time. Is because you're not getting the same impressions, or you're not getting as much information from a regular class. You can just trust that if they're there, they like you, they want to be there, and you're doing just fine. Continue. Yeah.
I think trust is a very important word, and it helps create that sort of inner atmosphere of, I have this, I'm going to share it. I'm going to share it in the way that works best for me, whatever your communication style is, but to trust that that's what you want to send, and that's the direct message that you're going to give, rather than breaking it down into tiny little, these tiny little moments, a little bit more of a singular, I'm going to trust that this is what I want to say, and that it's going to come across, and that you're going to have your moment to process that before we move on. Something we can also practice. You and I talked about, like, what are things that we can really work on actually, and like what are some practical tips and tricks. And if we just recorded ourselves in a session and recorded and practiced speaking into the camera, and okay, maybe I have my dance material and I want to start off my class talking about the importance of the history and where this came from, and that's how I'm going to lead into the class, and then I'm going to show a short clip, and then we're going to move into the dancing, kind of practicing those little moments of just delivering those ideas as a very clear, small package, to use this word again, right into the camera, and then you can check and see how it works for yourself, and what's the difference if you're looking into the camera or if you're watching yourself. And I think that's even maybe a more reinforcing thing to look at, like just that extreme difference and how it feels to then watch that video back and see, oh yeah, when I myself, that person is speaking into the camera, I feel a lot more like I'm being spoken to.
Yeah. I remember I was having, I was taking a class of one of my dance partners, and she was talking about where you're projecting your energy and what energy are you projecting. And for example, we were in a class and there's a piano, and say, you're dancing to the piano, project your energy that way. And it makes a difference. Even if you're turning around, your mind is still there. And when you turn towards the piano, for example, it was sort of, it gave you a concentration. And I think having that, especially when we are dancing, having that in our mind where we're projecting towards the camera, if it would be a performance, you would maybe be a little bit deliberate with saying, I'm going to project to this side of the room in the beginning, and then I'm going to move over to that side of the room. In this case, we don't have that. That's where we're projecting, period. So when we're doing our warm-ups, when we're doing the movements and so on, that this is where people are, this is where you're looking, and that you need practice, because I think in the beginning it can feel awkward to be deliberate with a projection.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's, like, when we work on acting technique, performance technique, stage presence, there's the idea of, I'm projecting my energy right into this tiny dot. And you can make yourself small with that, which can be useful if maybe I want to think of, like, I'm just talking to Ali and we're in a really small space together, and I'm sharing this kind of secret with you. And this is something that I'm just going to tell you, Ali, and this is going to make your dancing that much more joyful. Or we can have the moment of, maybe I've got 30 different participants and we want to think about bringing a lot of energy into our dance. So I'm not actually I'm sending through this little circle, but I'm imagining behind that a large space that I'm filling with my presence and my energy. Yeah. So I think just like small sort of adjustments of your imagination, like, who am I and what am I projecting into? It's not just that dot and I'm like stopping my focus and I know I just need to focus on the dot. and say everything that I'm going to say into this dot, and it's a flat screen. But the idea of like, I'm sending a lot of energy into an intimate singular space that we're sharing, or I'm sending a lot of energy into this space and I'm imagining it sort of opening up and there's a lot of participants and we're dancing together in this room. I know for me, I'm very practiced in playing with my imagination like that. So it immediately ignites a sort of playful and energetic and creative energy for me and changes the way I feel when I'm talking to you. I don't know if it's visible for you, but or if you sense that, but I know for me, when I'm sending, it makes a really big difference. And it can be something that you play with throughout the class, or throughout maybe in one class you're teaching to a bigger audience, so you want to play with the sense of large space, many bodies in it. And in another class, you might want to create a more intimate atmosphere for different reasons, to make the sense of like, okay, we're all like in this very safe atmosphere. We're going to experiment and improvise together. Or like, hey, let's really work on our performance style and let's work on jam circle energy and like get, just showing everything that you've got. And maybe that's when you want to use your imagination to think about that space, all while still sending it through, that little camera.
This makes me think of one of our conversations we had. You were addressing something similar, where you were talking about how an actor needs to bring authentic emotions in a fake setting, right? Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. We have this very sort of strange setup that we were just talking about, this empty space. I have a ring light. I've maybe got uncomfortable amount of light coming into my face. We've got a microphone on and no one's in this room, but I still want to cue in to, hey, like, you're right in front of me and let's have this conversation. And it really is just an acting exercise. And acting, when it's done successfully, is honesty and authenticity. It's removing the mask instead of putting on the mask. So it's not about, okay, I have to do this and I've got to make sure that I say Ali's name once and I've got to smile and I have to open my eyes wide and I make sure that I project, and like all of these things that we're adding on top to perform may work superficially. It may improve, a bit of your delivery, and it's articulation's always helpful and looking and, opening up. But I think where we're going to have more success is simplifying. So taking off all of those musts and musts and musts. We can practice some of those techniques on our own, but when we get into the setting of I'm presenting, I'm teaching, I'm dancing with students via Zoom, we really just want to imagine ourselves in a space that we want to be in, that we want to be dancing in. So maybe you're in the Savoy Ballroom and you're really like cutting rug, and that's the vibe that you want to give. Like, turn on the music, turn it up loud. You don't need to hear my voice anymore. Let's just let's hit it. And imagining that space around you, I think, is going to help. That sense of atmosphere within you is going to transfer more to your students. And if it's a more focused setting and we really want to get into something, like, get excited about that and maybe imagine that your space is smaller and everybody's crouched in and you're in this huddle and like, hey, there's this, this musician and he's really lighting it up on the piano and we're all dancing and sweating and, the things that we're missing right now.
And you would maybe even ask them to huddle, like, come closer to your screen, come closer to your camera. So nice. Yeah.
That brings in another point that you and I have chatted about, is what options do we have to be dynamic in this setting? And the closer and the further away, and how we're moving our body in space. If I'm back here and I'm talking to you about, well, we really want to focus on this and, make sure we do that. It's a lot harder for you to connect with me on that. If I'm talking about like, come on, show me your energy, like, yeah, let's go, then I'm filling the space and I'm thinking big with that energy. So this distance could work well. But if I want to share something that's a little bit more intimate, like let's get in that huddle, like, let's come in, let's have a chat. And those can be really useful really useful techniques to create more atmosphere and dynamic within a classroom.
Yeah.
And it works for me as well as a performer. Coming back to the idea of authenticity, I'm not using this because I know it works. I'm using it because it works on me as well. When I come in and I'm chatting, I can see your face a little bit better. It changes the way that I feel in the space as well. So that's what I want to keep coming back to and keep emphasizing. I'm the energetic, bubbly, clowny cheerleader type when I teach. So that's probably coming through right now. But others, may have a much more subtle style and may just enjoy the intimacy of connecting in this way. And then we're going to move back and practice that. You move back in the space and you just fill it with your sort of sense of rootedness and calm. And, we're doing this together and I'm sharing that. All of that is completely feasible and works well as long as you find kind of your thing and you really share that.
Nice. And this makes me think about more benefits that Zoom brings in, or online streaming fundamentally, is when you're coming close like this, when you're huddling around, so to say, from the participant's perspective, it's but just you and that person, right? It feels like you're speaking directly to that person. Then add the fact that, well, hopefully everybody has written their name on the profile, so that it happens sometimes in class we forget the names of the people, but here, like, it's right there, so you can come closer and you can start addressing people with names, or leave the names out and just say and just talk like you're talking to one person, and you can create very intimate moments simply because you're having that huddled moment and the other person get a front row seat, so to say. So it's like there's nobody else who's blocking them from having that moment with you.
Yeah, that is something that's very unique and pretty cool to play with, and helpful if very few videos are on and you're not getting any sense of feedback, or you get the feeling of like, okay, we're very sort of separate. And it's hard to create that intimacy for whatever reason of a group, then that one-on-one, I think, is a great way to go, and something that Zoom offers in a way that a group class wouldn't. You wouldn't go that route of, I'm just teaching for Ali, but there's 50 other people around me. Yeah, definitely. And I think you and I have talked about language before too, and the power of addressing you singular. If you're teaching, especially in pre-recorded sessions, using the just you, I'm just talking to you, one person at home, can be very powerful and very helpful for that person to feel meant, like you're intending them.
So when you're giving away a task, for example, and instead of saying, for those of you who are beginners, just try it like this, and those of you who are advanced, try it like that, rather change that formulation and sentence to something more like, if you want to challenge, if you want to take it at the beginner level, you just do it this way. But if you want to challenge yourself with advanced level material, then take it to this, do it like this, for example. Still try to formulate your sentence in a way that you're still talking to one person. Most likely that's how the setting is. Frankly, this is a technique that, or rather, should I say, this is an approach that is even valid if you're talking from stage, or if you're teaching even in bigger classes. I try to talk in terms of, I'm still talking to an individual person as much as possible. Like there are moments where it will be very awkward to do that live, but over in pre-recorded videos for online or in Zoom, most likely that's the right approach to go about it, even if you don't know who the other person is and what their level is or what the experience is. You just offer the full range to that person as a choice, rather than trying to cover multiple people, cover that one person's multiple choices.
Which is nice because it doesn't separate people into groups. It makes that every option accessible for you, and you get to choose what you want to do, rather than for those of you that are beginners, okay, I guess I'm a beginner, so I'm in that group. And those of you that are advanced, okay, I guess I'm in that group. You're like separating kind of psychologically in a way.
Yeah.
Just that small language turn, as you said it to me into the camera, I could tell the difference of like, oh, I have all of these options and I can choose what's best for me. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then in other situations, we may want to do some things to try and make everyone feel connected. I know I've taught classes where it was about, Big Apple or something, and you want that sense of like, hey, let's exchange and let's share. And it's not about proper moves and technique. It's about energy shared within a circle and searching for ways to get these individual little screens, these little squares on everybody's screens to feel like a group. And then you can choose language that's a lot about we and let's and okay, now we're going to try. And then you've linguistically kind of made the group into one.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. For me, I have a tendency to do that, especially if I want to, how do you say it, not bring praise, but maybe corrections of some sort. Like, for example, if I want to address on something I'm seeing in the screen, instead of saying, you're doing like this, your kick is going that direction, but you should go that direction, I might actually turn that around. I mean, if I'm really talking to one individual person, this is exactly what I would go for. But if I'm sort of addressing the whole group, saying, oh, I'm noticing we need to go into a different direction with this, there I would switch. I would put myself with them and saying, right now I'm noticing this thing, but what we want to achieve is this thing, and sort of take it a journey we want to go together when we are solving this, so to say.
Yeah, and I think just listening to you and watching you tell me about that, I see you naturally using a lot of gestures, and I find myself doing the same with Zoom. And I think like filling the screen with our bodies is another way to sort of invite in this sense of like, okay, we're not just these floating heads in these screens. We're still kind of engaging with each other. And when I move my body to tell you something, that cues your body to see that and feel more engaged. So even if we have that sort of technological distance between and geographical distance between us, I think using the body a lot is also a way of making us feel somehow more connected, because you see that it's not just words, it's like I'm talking to you, and that physicalization of those words, I think, does a lot via Zoom to connect us more.
Yeah. And this actually, to add to that, is it really depends on your camera as well. In my case, for example, I have a wide angle full frame sort of camera, which is very luxurious because I am about 30 centimeters away from my camera, and you can see from this level where my hands are. So I can just gesticulate here like I would usually do, and you can see my arm. But many cameras don't have that frame. They would, for example, cut from here. So if anything you do on like below that, it's like me being under the table with my hands. You won't see that. So actually this is tricky because it goes a little bit against how you would usually gesticulate. But when we're talking to camera, if you want to actually bring across that part of our communication, we need to gesticulate a lot more higher up. So it feels a little bit like we are voguing, so to say, as we are going across this. But depending on the framing of your camera, now it doesn't make sense because I do have the full range and to play with. Like, depending on your own camera, you have to try that. Where do I have to gesticulate with my arms? So that part of me is also shown on the camera. This is something I'm noticing on YouTube. It becomes a little bit exaggerated, where they're like, I'm going to give you 5 tricks on how to go about this one thing. And the first tip is, like it becomes a little bit theatrical, which we don't need in dance classes. But actually, this one was a little bit extra. Maybe I did too many YouTube videos.
I find it helpful, though. I mean, I see you. I see you active, and I see you describing with your hands. It is a visual medium,
Yeah.
We're not in the space together, and the message that you're sending to me, I can hear, but I also am really seeing. And so anything that we're doing, and I'm a very gesticular physical theater person, so I do it a lot. And like you said, maybe too much, but I just find it, as a dancer and as a mover, it helps me get my message across. And then visually, fortunately, it also is effective, I think.
Exactly. As long as it's on camera. That's basically what I wanted to say.
And it's not down here.
Exactly. So it depends on your camera and how far away you are, and you just need to. That goes back to the practice part. So I do think it's very good for us to practice. We would just open up Zoom, press record, and then talk, teach, step back, step in, and then so you can focus on the camera, and then stop the recording, process the file, and then watch it. How do you like it? Where are you not coming across the way you thought you were coming across, right? Or I really like the expression you were saying, you're peeling back rather than adding. I feel like I would love to hear more about that idea in general, because it was, when you first said it to me, I was like, oh my God, that's so true. It can so much feel like you constantly need to add more scaffolding to your presentation, so it comes across, so it holds up right, so to say. Whereas you're about like, no, take away.
Yeah. It's something that's underestimated, I think, about acting and theater and performance. It's assumed it's a lot of fakery, perhaps, or of wearing masks and putting on costumes and everything is on top. You've got that thick caked on makeup, perhaps, if you're in a huge stage, although that's less and less of a trend. But it's adding, and it's so theatrical also in our everyday speech is generally used to mean fake, or somehow over and not realistic. But if you talk to an actor about what they do, it's very vulnerable. It's very much connecting with yourself. It's very much putting yourself out there without all of those masks. And even if you're doing mask work, so I come from a physical theater background, as I've said, and when you put on that mask, it just makes your body all the more unmasked. You would think it would somehow it protects you, but really it opens you up to be seen. And if we take that knowledge of, okay, we're opening ourselves up to be seen, and we accept that, and we appreciate that, like I'm bringing myself without all of this masking, I think it opens up a whole different way of connecting. Like, I'm just going to put myself out there. I'm going to use the things that I know, but I'm using it for myself because I want to connect with you rather than I have to and I should and I ought to do this and this and this. It's maybe subtle and psychological more than it is an active thing that you do. It's like just reframing in a way how you are on stage, and it takes a lot of practice and a lot of experience. That's what we do over time when we're training and when we're performing, and dance teachers do it every day as well. How can I bring myself to this class? But if you have that intention, I think it feels different and it comes across differently.
Yeah, it's like getting out of your own way mentally.
Yeah. Yeah, the thinking, the blocking yourself. So you're tight and you're in, I've got to do all these things. And instead just like, no, I have what I need. I know what I want to teach. I know what I want to share. And how can I take the most direct path straight to you and not block myself with a lot of ideas or a lot of preconceived notions about how I need to be doing this. So it's like you watch this video and listen to us chatting about it, and it gives you a lot of ideas. Let them inspire you, and then throw away the words, throw away the bullet points, and just be yourself and let that kind of develop over time, I think.
Yeah. Nice.
So you were talking earlier, Ali, about watching yourself on video and feedbacking that and learning from that. And I think one thing that's helpful when you're doing that is a little language trick that I've learned, which is describing yourself in third person. So when you watch it, saying, what is Ali doing that's effective here? What could Ali be doing better? But actually using that yourself. So it sounds maybe less, and for me it would be, okay, like I'm going to watch Lucy teach this class, and I'll see what things does Lucy do that really work for me, that really engage me, and what things am I seeing that I need more of from Lucy. And just that slight separation makes it a lot easier to process what you're seeing, because I know most people, even experienced performers, have a little bit of a hard time watching themselves. It's a little bit of that, cringe feeling, like, and why did I make that face? Or why did I say it like that? Or this is embarrassing. Those feelings come up, those insecurities come up. And a little bit of distancing immediately helps us be a little bit more compassionate with ourselves, because we wouldn't be as critical of someone else that we were watching. If I watched a video of you teaching, I would be curious. I would be, what is working? What's he doing well? What would I like to emulate? What things do I think could be done differently that might be more effective? But I wouldn't just run that sword right through the screen of like, this is all terrible. Exactly. So that little technique when you're watching yourself on video of kind of prepping your mindset before you give yourself feedback can be very helpful. And remembering to feedback yourself in a kinder way that you would someone else, which I'm saying not because I'm good at that. I struggle with it just as much as anybody. Self-criticism is part of the game, having to deal with that.
Yeah.
But
especially as dancers.
Yeah,
I feel like it's even more.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But it's a technique that I've learned recently and find helpful, and it makes sense, and something that I will be working on as well, that I just wanted to share.
That's a great tip. I know many of my students, for example, I was running a how to practice session and introduced the idea of filming yourself. Just put up your phone and record and watch it. And despite taking classes for so many years, like many of them had never done that. And the first time they saw themselves like that, it was difficult. But it's also a habit, and you get used to it. And I mean, for me, editing the video, sometimes it's like, okay, you have to see yourself almost frame by frame. And it can be painful. So that tip of like taking that feedback from a third person perspective could be is a great way to softening the emotional blow of seeing your own expressions in a way you're not used to.
Yeah. I think what I find so helpful and so enjoyable about this experience, dialoguing with you for DIS-TANZEN and seeing the other videos that you've been producing, is we're all figuring it out. And none of us, even professional dance teachers that have been teaching for years and may have a lot of experience pre-recording things, it's new. And different things work well for different people. So I like this opening up the conversation that you're doing with this project. And I enjoy exploring, and just this dialogue that we've had today has been interesting for me to see what connections, what things am I using that I wasn't aware of, just based off of my theater experience, and what are some things that I could and we could explore more. What are potential areas that we can practice, that we can bring into our awareness, that we can keep as intentions that might help us take off those layers and those masks. Because even as I talk about that, it's challenging. We get in and we're like, okay, now we're supposed to teach, or now we're supposed to talk, and you have that freeze up of like, a camera is filming me. I'm not doing it live and in person, and it just takes us searching and practicing and failing and trying again. But all with the intention of connecting. And so I think the atmosphere you're creating and you're opening up with this project is really doing that. So I'm appreciative to you for this opportunity to chat.
Oh, thank you so much. Actually, I'm the one who should thank you for this opportunity to record these things, to share it with everybody watching this video, because we've been having a couple of conversations already, and I feel like I learned a lot about these things, especially the idea of peeling away the layers and a few other things that have been mentioned here. And having that recorded here for everybody to see feels very rewarding. And so I thank you very much for that, and appreciate you sharing your knowledge and experience with everybody out there. So thank you, Lucy.
My pleasure. Thank you, Ali.